Hi, I'm Adrian and I'm a designer.
And my name is Florine and I'm a developer. And today we're going to talk about how to lie about your site's performance.
Before we start lying to people, or teaching them how to lie to people, let's get a drink. It's early. So this is imported from Denmark. It says blodsukker on it. I hope that's not in there. It's a non-carbonated energy drink. Drink to improve. We could use that. So.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really dubious. Right. Do you shake it before you use?
They didn't include any instructions. Oh, you're really optimistic about this.
We're gonna need it. Cheers. This tastes like sugar and nothing.
Yeah, this tastes like something gone stale.
So, what are you going to talk about today?
Actually, we're going to talk about perceived performance and how a user visiting your site perceives the speed on how your site loads, or speed of your animations, or speed of certain actions, and the feedback that he gets. Actually, this episode is inspired by a talk given by Paul Backhouse from Google at the Frontier Spring event here in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam.
I missed that.
So we're going to talk about some of the points he made, and we've added a bit of context to that. So,
okay. But basically, what we're talking about is that usually performance is discussed as an absolute thing. So, like, you have to load it within X amount of time, or you have to make your site this small, or
and that's actually one of the things he said is nobody cares how fast your site is, only how fast it feels. Okay. And I think that's a very important part. And it's a lot of performance reviews where they look at load time, for instance, for the whole page. That may not be the best metric to look at. It's also on a smaller level. We're not just talking about page load time. It's also about giving feedback. According to Nielsen Norman Group, there are a couple of limits where you have there. So 0.1 seconds, that feels like instant.
Okay, so if someone clicks something...
clicks on a button or scrolls and it happens within 0.1 seconds, that feels just like instant. Then there is the 1 second limit, and that's within the user flow. If I click something and within 1 second something, that's fine, it's okay. I notice the delay, but it's not like I'm going to give up.
It's not annoying you enough, basically.
Yeah, no, it's not annoying you enough. And then there is the 10-second attention span. After 10 seconds you give up, but the funny thing is that in Paul Bacau's talk, he said that actually in 2016, it's not 10 seconds anymore. It's 8.25 or in that range. So
that's 20.
So you have to be you have to be faster. Okay. You have to make the user feel that something is faster. Yeah. That does not necessarily mean that you actually have to that an action has to be done or an action has to be fully completed. You just have to give faster feedback, and that's a funny thing. You read an article that the progress bar, that when you add it on small, short operations,
and you add a loading bar to it, that users perceived it as slower, simply because you added the loader and gave them the feeling that this was going to be a long and dreary task.
The opposite also sometimes is true, isn't it? Wasn't it in OS 10 that Apple added the loading bar, and that actually was
basically fake.
An artificial delay, just so people feel, okay, the computer is starting up.
Something is happening,
Yeah.
So that's a form of strategic feedback. I think we're going to talk about that a bit later. Yeah. But when you say that it decreased from 10 seconds to 8 seconds, like a 20% drop, how does that affect like the user flow thing? Does that also, do you know?
I'm not sure, but I don't think those numbers are available. So that didn't really change a lot.
All that much.
It's more in the I guess it's just how patient is your user, and maybe in the early 2000s we were more patient than we are now.
Exactly, that's what sort of my point. If you're used to slow connections and things loading slowly, and your browser's being slower, your computer's being slower in general, your phone's being slower, then everything is, in perspective. If it's sort of in line with the rest of your experience, it doesn't feel as slow, I think.
No, exactly. So we have a couple of techniques on how you can trick your user, you lie into user, and there's also a drawback to some of these lies. You may end up as a fraud. We want to talk about 4 different methods on how to actually achieve a better performant feeling for your user.
Yeah. So this is we're not talking about making your site absolutely perform better, but relatively perform better.
Yeah.
So like in the perception of the user.
So we're going to talk about preemptive start, early completion, optimistic UI, visual illusion.
All right.
So let's start with the first one.
Yeah, let's start with the preemptive start. And that's basically where you start to do something before your user expects it to start or prompts it to start.
Yeah, well,
it feels a bit like magic. A tiny bit.
It is, but let's consider this. If you're on a search result page on a website or in an application, and the user is going to hover over the search results, you can. He's going to move his cursor to the result he wants to click on, and instead of waiting for the user to click, you can already load stuff for that result on mouse over instead of waiting for the click when you actually do the navigation. You could load assets, you could load data, and okay, there might be a small chance that you have to discard the data, but nobody cares about that because it feels faster. If you click, it's snappier. It gets results.
It'll load faster. And this example probably, because we were talking about a mouse over thing, we're going to assume that you're not on a mobile data plan. Then again, you might be. I don't know. Yeah. And then preloading might, depending on where you live, it might cost you money.
Yeah, okay, but I think that's a totally different discussion. That maybe we should not.
There are also some ethics involved. Yeah. If you preload stuff that you don't know for sure you're going to need, then maybe you will impact someone's data.
Yeah, absolutely. Another example would be if you have a list of page results that once you have shown the first page, you will already preload the second page. Yeah. So when the user didn't find the result he has, okay, let's hope this is not a search engine, but that he finds the results on the first page. But when he goes to the second page, it's like instant because you have already loaded that data.
That would be really interesting. That could make like page things very snappy.
Yeah, and you can start actions before the user actually does the action.
Yeah, I saw I think it's on Vimeo, the video by Paul Backhaus, and he also talks about loading assets. For instance, when you're on a login screen, so you are any page that's behind a login, you start to load whatever's behind that before the person actually enters their credentials.
The user will take a couple of seconds before
to
fill in the login screen and continue. So you can use that time to load more data.
I mean, usually behind the login screen, certain things are going to appear. I mean, the frame of whatever's coming behind that, you can definitely preload that and assets and stuff. That's really interesting. And the same, he also gives an example for checkouts. In, for instance, forms, when you buy something in a web shop, if it's a multi-step form, actually this is true of any multi-step form, you can load the next step or even the step after that while the person is filling out the first step of the wizard, which is really interesting. And that could make like a form experience much, much faster.
Yeah, much more speedy and snappy. There's another technique that's called early completion, and that shows something before it's actually finished. Progressive JPEG, for instance, is an excellent example of this. It might be still a bit fuzzy, but you're already showing an image, even if it's not completed.
It's there.
So you are going to fake that. And that's the same thing that happens when you load a YouTube video. We're not going to load the full video before you can watch it.
No, you just load the first whatever seconds.
Yeah, and then it will stream. It will just stream, and that gives a much better experience than when you had to download the whole video and then actually wait for that.
And I mean, a high-res YouTube video is like 2 gigabytes easy. So you have to download that before you can watch it, even the first 10 seconds to even figure out if you want to watch it. The same thing also happens on apps, for instance. So where they preload the app shell, so whatever's standard elements inside an app.
I think iOS does something like this, that when you resume an app, it actually shows you a screenshot first and then loads
the old state.
Old state, and then will actually load the app.
Yeah, so really interesting.
Overall, it just feels that something happens snappier.
Yeah.
because the user remembers what the application looked like when he exited it. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. The third one is optimistic UI, and this one is a bit tricky because here there is potential risk that your users might find out that you lied to them.
Yeah.
And optimistic UI basically means that it shows an action as completed or something as done, even if it's not. So, for instance,
but with the assumption that, and that's the optimistic part, okay, this is going to happen anyway.
Eventually.
So you're fine.
The example that Paul Bakaus uses is Instagram's like. So you can like something even on a bad connection or a connection that's, non-existent. And it'll just, as soon as the connection resumes, it'll sync to the server and it'll register your like. But on the UI, it'll show your like as already being registered, even though it's not. You might be 10 miles underground.
Worst case scenario is that it will never be synced, or it will the like will get lost. I think that's acceptable to have a better, snappier UI.
I think if what they're doing with a like, no offense to anyone who values likes, it's not important. So if a like gets lost, big frick. But for instance, if you were to use optimistic UI on a checkout in an e-commerce site, but we'll trust that the banking thing goes through eventually. Another part of this is the non-blocking. So we saw some examples in a Medium article,
which we'll link below.
Yeah, we'll link in the description. It's by Sophie Paxton, and she said that optimistic UI has also to do with showing stuff that's being done in the back end and sort of get out of the way for the user to still use the front end.
And still, so you can continue your action. So
exactly.
So the example shows that uploading an image, for instance, and you're in a web editor environment and you're uploading an image. But you can already show the image on the front end because you have it on the front end. And while it's still uploading to the back end, you can already start moving it around and doing layout and stuff like that, and adding more text or more images.
Yeah. That makes it a lot faster than if you have to wait for high-res images to be uploaded.
And then it has to come back from the server again, probably.
Yeah. So that's like a shortcut, and you're basically trusting that the upload will complete.
Yeah. Of course, the edge cases where it will not complete or it will fail, then you're dealing with those errors, and the user interface with that user interface showing that is probably going to be a bit trickier because.
And because you're giving the illusion that it's already done. This is going
or it's being done,
and you're coming back saying, it failed after all.
Yeah.
That might be more jarring to the user than just having to wait and then failing somewhere in the middle.
But there's a really nice animation about this in the in the article. So
it's really cool. We'll also link that.
Yeah, have a look.
And the last one.
Yeah, visual illusions, and this.
It's not magic, so we're not gonna put on top hats and bunnies and stuff. No, none of that.
But what is it?
The thing that Paul Bakaus mostly talks about has to do with animation. For instance, use easing, especially ease out on short animations and ease in on longer ones, so that
they feel faster.
Yeah, exactly. So you weigh them differently. For instance, if you use ease in on long animations, that means that the last part is the fast part, and you will remember, because it's a long thing, you remember the end being shorter.
Yeah.
So it's trickery. And there is some fine nuances to
and it may not everybody will experience it the same, of course.
Definitely not.
No.
And another example is, of course, momentum scrolling. So it just scrolls faster.
So if you do a short flick, it will scroll faster.
Exactly. Yeah. I think this is all highly relative, and like you said, it depends a lot on who is your user. Because what you're doing is you're basically sort of hiding the delays and hiding the wait times. But that doesn't take away that they're still there. And in absolute terms, none of these things will make them faster as such.
No, I guess that's fine, because that's how we perceive time. And I think there is a really good example of this. It's from a TED Talk, I think, by Rory Sutherland.
Yeah, from Ogilvy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he talks about how they spent millions making the Eurostar connection from Paris to London, I think like 10 or 20 minutes faster. 10 or 20 minutes, they have little impact on people who
traveling.
Yeah, on the traveling itself. And he said that basically you could also have, for a fraction of that cost, you could also have champagne served to every passenger on that train by beautiful models, and people would actually ask to have the trip made longer. So, no, it's highly relative. How do we perceive time, and how tedious do we perceive something to be? I mean, I think there's a lot of wins to be had, especially in the optimistic part, where you get out of the way. So you have tedious wait times, but you are allowing your users to do something else in the meantime to sort of distract them from the wait.
And there's also another funny thing is that how do we perceive something as being as value? I mean, let's say if I'm going to a restaurant and I'm going to order a pizza and it is there within 2 minutes, and I think, how
long has that been waiting?
How long has it been been kept warm? And this is not a fresh pizza. And if it takes 20 minutes, you will value that more.
Okay. So there's a perception of value in how long something takes.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Because it builds anticipation also.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it must be really good because if I
because it takes long.
Yeah. It also depends on the situation. I mean, if you're in a hurry, 2 seconds or 10 seconds load time, or waiting for something you don't like. But if you're going to download a movie or download a game, so it's fine. It's fine.
I do understand what you mean because it's sort of dependent on how much time do you have. But I think the most important part of all of this is to give at least some kind of strategic feedback to your user.
Yeah.
At least something is happening. That they don't just, for instance, click on something and
then they have to wait.
They have to wait 5 seconds and then something happens.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm not going to click and then sit patiently while I have no indication.
Magic happens
I have no indication that anything is happening. Maybe the thing doesn't work or it's crashed. Early feedback is very important, I think.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
So I guess that's a good place
to
to cover this subject and to wrap up. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And thanks to our sponsors, DigitPaint and Asphalt Photo. See you in the next one.